Hello, Stephen.
Hello, Catherine.
Let's start with some news from China that's causing concern about the state of the Chinese economy.
Yeah, it's a survey of the Chinese manufacturing sector, in fact, coming from HSBC, showing that activity fell to an 8-month low in March. The Purchasing Managers Flash Index, so a first estimation, came in at 48.1. Anything below 50 shows a sector in contraction. That's what's worried HSBC about the state of the Chinese economy and whether or not its growth is going to continue slowing down. Not causing great pessimism on the markets, though, it has to be said. You can see a sweep of green across the Asian markets this morning, all in positive territory. Shanghai shares did fall slightly on that news from HSBC, but it has risen again in the past couple of hours. The Nikkei in Japan leading the gains in Asia. It's closed up 1.8% after those falls we saw at the end of last week.
Okay, well, let's go from the stock markets to the currency markets. Some businesses here in France say they're suffering because of the high value of the euro. Stephen, do explain.
Yeah, one of the really big factors that's moved markets in recent months has been currencies, and that's something that's changed things for exporters here in Europe. Let's take a look at what happened between the value of the euro and the dollar. That's what this graph shows us. You can see the value of the euro rising gradually but steadily over the past few months. It's at a level now of about where it was in 2011. Now that means that European exporters are finding it harder to sell their products abroad as they're more expensive to those buying outside the euro area. In southwest France, the problem is affecting those aircraft manufacturers that have sprung up around Airbus's headquarters in Toulouse. From there, Chris Bachman reports.
It's showtime. Daher Sakata may not be a household name like Airbus, but it's France's fourth biggest airplane maker and just unveiled its latest six-seater aircraft, the TBM 900. They cost €3.5 million each, and 80% of them are sold in the US and Asia. They are market leaders, but the company says they are competing against their rivals with one arm tied behind their back.
The high euro makes it very difficult for us to sell at the right price. So we have to invest much more than other countries in innovation, in robotization, automatization, in order to compensate the price of the euro.
3 hours away by car is this supplier, Ricardo. It has a niche market making parts for aircraft that are still flying but no longer being built. Just 15% of its business is outside the Eurozone, but management is under pressure from clients to bill in dollars, and that could mean less work for subcontractors in France.
To compensate for the fluctuation of the dollar, we have to buy a maximum of raw materials and components in dollars. So we're obliged to look for subcontractors outside the Eurozone.
Both companies say maintaining the aerospace know-how in Europe is their priority, but extremely difficult in the long term if the high euro means their overheads are automatically 20% higher.
Now, staying with news from the aerospace sector, and the Asian low-cost airline Tiger Airways is buying 37 new Airbus planes. The A320neos have a list price of $3.8 billion, although the company says it negotiated a significant discount on that price. It's a major expansion for the Singapore-based airline, which currently has 48 planes in operation. Credit Suisse is reported to be considering up to 500 job cuts in its private banking division. The Swiss newspaper says up to half of the posts affected would be in Switzerland. The bank has refused to speculate on the number of jobs that could be involved, but has already announced it's targeting cost savings of €3.3 billion by 2015. And there was a sharp fall in the amount of money spent by Russian tourists in the UK in the wake of the Ukraine crisis. A study by the tax-free shopping company Global Blue found that spending by Russian nationals was down 17% in February. Russians are among the biggest spending non-EU visitors to the UK, along with tourists in the Middle East, China and Nigeria.
Okay, well, while we're talking about spending and costs, Stephen, a quick word about the cost of the local elections, our top story, of course, here in France.
Yes, of course, elections are a costly business. They cost governments an awful lot of money to run, but they are, of course, the integral part of a democracy. There are around 23 million votes cast in France on Sunday at the latest count, and that will cost French taxpayers just over €128 million euros. Now that includes, to break down some of where those expenses go, 51 million will go towards reimbursing candidates' expenses, something that's done by the French government here. Printing election materials and ballot papers costs over 26 million, and the cost of staffing those elections, so polling staff and counting, will cost almost 11 million. Now, of course, this at a time the French government is trying to reduce the amount of money it's spending on public issues. I can tell you the parliamentary elections cost an awful lot more than these local elections, 164 million, and the presidential election back in 2012 cost almost 200 million, so a little cheaper these two rounds of elections.
Expensive business, isn't it, democracy? Thanks very much, Stephen Carroll there with the business news. The local elections